So this is the arbor, or the spindle we turned yesterday out of 12L14. So we're working to a drawing here, working to this these dimensions. And you'll notice that this one is quite a bit smaller in diameter in the center, and that's an attempt to save material. I've got some 3/4 inch stock that I turned this out of, but this gear has to go on this this spindle, and it's floppy, obviously, because it's 30mm ID on this. So what I'm going to attempt to do is take some of this 1.5 inch stock that I've got and bore it out to a press fit on this shaft, and then, assuming that's successful, when I press it onto this shaft, I'll drive some cross pins through to make sure it doesn't twist, because this gear is going to mount to the outer side. So the first thing I want to do is get our rough stock pressed onto this, and then once on this, I'll grab the bearing journals in the chuck, and I'll turn the larger OD to fit this ID second. So that's where we are now. I've got the small little 2-inch chunk of 1.5 inch chucked up in the lathe. You can probably hear that radio. There we go. So I got the 2-inch long, it's actually about 2 1/4, chucked up in the lathe, and I've got it running as true as possible to the OD. It's not a perfectly round surface, but it's very, very close. So we're going to keep this this shaft nearby. The first operation is we'll face the face of this. We'll do the facing of this, and then we'll center drill and start our boring operation to get to this OD, and we'll go from there. So here we are. I think we can call that enough. We'll turn this away, so I'm not going to bother wasting any more length on this. Okay, so we're going to drill, center drill for our, let's get that in there a little tighter. We'll center drill for the beginning of this boring game. Get it? Boring? Anyway, so center drilled hole. Let's start with this 1/4 inch. It would be nice if it were super concentric, but it's not critical since I'm turning the OD so much anyway. So we'll do this, and we'll see how well this drilling op happens. Now we are drilled as far as we're going to be able to get, because 3/4 is too big. We got to bore a good 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch off of that, or 1/16 of an inch. Oh, we're going to drop that out a little bit more, I guess. pretty good inside, I think. It's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it, I think. Yeah, we're really close now. That'll press on, I think. Okay. Chamfer that end. All right, so we've bored this out. You can see, bored as smoothly as I can get it. The boring bar I've got in my mini lathe and in my lack of rigidity, 2-inch bore is a lot of tool hanging out there, and it's a very skinny boring bar. So with luck, these are pretty close to sliding together as it is. I've got a little bit of taper, I bet. No, maybe not. Just got a little bit of play. So it's a little looser than I would have liked on that end, but it's really tight on this side. So I believe I have just a tad bit of taper. Yeah, I do, which is fine. I'll press this onto here, and then we'll turn some stuff to length. All right, well, I overshot just a bit, but that's because I don't know how to press. But this slides and spins just a little because there's just a little bit of friction in there. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I've got it here, I'm going to get it as tightly as I can, and I'm going to go and cross drill. So let's move you guys over to the drill press, and we'll put this thing in a V-block and cross drill for pins. All right, we're over on the drill press with my little makeshift V-block thingy. We've marked a line down the center, and I scribed it. I don't know if you'll be able to see the scribe line, but it's in there. So we're just going to do a couple of cross pin holes, and I've got my center drill here. And the first thing I'll do is I'm going to center drill the 2 locations, then I'll put the shaft back in, and we'll go from there. And we're ready. Now we at least have them pretty close to lined up where I want them. First, and again, these aren't super critical as much as they are just keeping them aligned. Now we're through on that one. Do I want to just leave them at this size? Because that's not a terrible, it's not a terrible dimension right there. Maybe that's a good size. Going up to 1/4 doesn't seem like it'd be worth it. 3/16 it is. Now, here's the problem. I don't have any pins. All right. Well, after a quick trip to the store, I now have some 3/16 pins that, there we go. So with any luck, and they're a bit long, so I can cut them if I have to. Good, 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 good. They will be very tight. That's good. So what I'm going to do real fast before I put them in here is I'm going to cut them to to be under the finished diameter that I'm going to do, and we'll go from there. All right, so we shorten these to a little under 30 millimeters, and so we're going to drive them on in, drive one of them in here now. Okay, so we've put the first pin in just to keep things aligned while we drill the second hole. I didn't want to have this turn on me while I was in the middle of it, and we're going to have to drive it a little bit further. It's probably 3/8 of an inch down in there, and it's probably only an 1/8 inch down here, so we'll deal with that. But for now, let's just drill the second hole. We're through on that one. Then we'll just put this second pin in. And then we'll chamfer these holes. We'll be ready to turn. So one more pin goes in, and then we'll chuck this up to turn it. Alright, so we've pushed the pins in to both of these. What I just discovered or realized last night when I was cutting the smaller shaft, I had been doing all of my measurements for the features from the end in on both sides. Well, if you cut your piece oversized, that means the middle bit's going to end up being way too long, and you can see this shoulder is how much longer. So it works out well because this thread got a little buggered anyway, so I don't like it. So I'm perfectly happy to lose that thread and start a new one about the same length. So this is what we'll do now is we'll face this little edge off here just to make it look clean, and then we'll flip it around and grab it by this journal here, carefully by this journal here, and turn the rest of this. But so far it looks pretty good. It's holding. It's going to be stiff, I think. It should be okay. So we'll get this thing in the lathe and give it a shot. So we've got our shaft in, one gripped by the bearing journal in the chuck. The other has the last dead center in it, keeping that sturdy. And all we're really doing on this end is we're going to face this shoulder. When I drilled, I left a little bit of room because I knew I had some. And so this one's not a terribly critical clearance, but it's got a little bit of play to get in that. So what we'll do now is we'll start turning that bit. That should be good to go right there. Yeah, that face will do. I'm going to flip it around now. Alright, so now we flipped it around and we got the tailstock up. I turned the compound in the hopes to get a little more clearance here around the tailstock. You can't really see that in the video, but we'll tilt this just a little bit so we can try to get, because we need to get all the way over into that half-inch area at some point. But for now, the big goal is we're going to get this face to get our large barrel to length, which should be 2.00 inches. And then get this all nice and clean. We're going to continue this bearing journal over up into the wall, and then we'll continue this threaded section up until our specified length for that journal again. We're basically moving this journal to the left, and it'll be an 800 thousandths long wide journal. So we'll start first by facing this, and we've got to remove about a 1/4 inch to get that into tolerance. So we're going to be shooting for 2 thousandths, well, for a full 2 inches, and we are 250 to 260, somewhere in there. Yeah. So we need to go to 2. I'm going to move about 250 thou. Alright, so now we are, this length is good. We are within 7 thou, I think it's 5 or 7 thou oversized, which is good because when I do this journal, I'm going to face it just one more time. So that's the next step, is we're going to set to extend this journal. I've cut it close, but we're probably 6 or 8, we're probably 10 or 15 thou oversized on the radius. So that's the next operation, is to get that journal, just to continue this diameter up to it. So we are trying to blend a previous operation together here. So what we'll do is set our calipers like we had before, zero it We'll go to millimeters now. Actually, I'm going to stick with thou. And we're going to shoot to get 593 thou. Let's try that again, make sure. 593, 594, 594, 593. So somewhere in that 594, let's aim for 594 right there. Zero that. This should be a fairly simple single pass operation. What I'll do is I'll come out here, which is what I'm going to be turning away anyhow, and we'll zero. Put a little new oil on that. Give it, because it's a little warm. It's breaking down just a tad. So drop another bit of oil on the center. And kick it on. That is too much. And lock it in. Let's take right there. Okay, so since I'm moving the journal anyways, because I overcut the piece and I made a slight mistake yesterday, I've decided to take advantage of that mistake and use that, what will become threaded area, what was the old journal. I'm going to move it in, so I'm going to use that as a sacrificial spot and use that to grab with the jaws while I do the real heavy turning of getting this large part down to diameter, which is 30 millimeters. So we've got it flipped around again, tailstock, dead center with some oil, and we're just going to turn this down, and I'll probably need to push these pins more as I get closer to my finished diameter, but for now they're clear by about 3/16 to 1/8 of an inch, somewhere in there. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing moving on diameter turning. Alright, so after a little bit of filing and some fine tuning and some barely tiny little shavings taking off, you can see there's dust down here. We've got just a bare slip fit. It's a little looser than I was hoping for, but I'll take it. It's absolutely fine. So the next bit is, this is now on, or available, able to go on. We want to flip it back around and get this thing down to 1/2 inch. Alright, so we flipped around and we're dialing in so that this former bearing journal is turned down to 1/2 inch for 375, so that the bearing journal left behind is 800 thou. Alright, the dyeing is over. Yeah, there's a crossing going on there. Here we are. I'm calling that good. So what I'm going to do now is we'll just, I think I can now grab the outside of this thing and I can just part this bit off, or just cut that bit off. That's what I'll do, because that journal took a little bit of a beating there. Yeah, let's flip this around real quick. I gotta do a little bearing repair here, bearing journal repair real fast, which is hopefully not going to mess with my, oh, please be big enough. Thank you, good. We're just gonna grab enough to throw the file at it. Yeah, we're not concentric at all, but this will eliminate my where is that? Let's have a look at that bearing anyway. Let's make sure that bearing is not a slip fit, and it's just barely. That'll do beautifully, yeah. Okay. That one's nice. That one's saved. Okay. This one's got a little bit of crud on it, but we're going to try it too, because this is how. This edge is way less finicky than the bearing journals are. Yeah, there's a little bit of room to play with on that one too. It's really concentric there. Yeah, that'll pop on. It wants to. Kinda wants to, not really. There it is. Now it wants to. All right. Alright, so threaded and parted this end off. Now, according to our drawing, let's put some of this stuff where it belongs. So we were looking for about 375 here, and it's not critical what it would be, but we're at about 380 on that, and this should be about 800. And we are right at 800, and actually we're at about 785, which will be fine. That's still enough room. This one was set to be 360, and we are at 336. We're at 650. Sorry, we're at 630, 635, 640, somewhere in there.